In a small town in Pennsylvania, 26-year-old Sarah had been in a relationship with her boyfriend, Mike, for 4 years. They shared an apartment and had a dog named Max. Sarah worked as a nurse at a local clinic, while Mike was a software developer who often worked from home. Their relationship seemed solid, filled with mutual respect and shared dreams of a future together. They had met at a friend's backyard barbecue in Allentown during the summer after Sarah graduated nursing school. Mike had been charming, attentive, and refreshingly straightforward compared to other men she'd dated. Within 6 months, they were inseparable, and by year 2, they had moved into a cozy 2-bedroom apartment with a small yard perfect for Max, the golden retriever mix they adopted from the local shelter. Sarah loved her job at Riverside Medical Clinic, where she worked alongside Dr. Patel in family medicine. The hours were long but rewarding, and she often came home with stories about the patients she'd helped that day. Mike would listen intently, his blue eyes focused on her as she spoke, occasionally reaching out to tuck a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear. They would cook dinner together, catch up on their favorite Netflix shows, and plan weekend getaways to the Pocono Mountains or the Jersey Shore. "We're building something real here," Mike had told her on their 3rd anniversary, as they clinked glasses of champagne at Bella Luna, their favorite Italian restaurant downtown. "You, me, Max, maybe someday a couple of kids, a house with a bigger yard." Sarah had felt her heart swell with happiness that night. This was everything she'd ever wanted: stability, partnership, love that felt genuine and secure. The first signs of change were subtle. Mike began receiving more calls than usual, stepping away to take them in the bedroom or on the balcony. "Just work stuff," he'd explain with a casual wave of his hand. "This new client is demanding." Sarah had no reason to doubt him. After all, Mike had recently been promoted to senior developer at Stellar Tech, the software company where he'd worked for the past 5 years. Then came the late-night coding sessions. "Gotta meet this deadline," he'd mutter, eyes glued to his computer screen until 2 a.m. Sarah would leave a cup of chamomile tea by his desk and kiss the top of his head before going to bed alone, Max curled at her feet where Mike used to be. By the time February rolled around, 6 months into these new patterns, Sarah realized they hadn't had a proper date night in weeks. Valentine's Day came and went with just a hasty card and drugstore chocolates from Mike, a stark contrast to previous years' thoughtful gifts and romantic dinners. When she mentioned it, he apologized profusely, blaming work stress and promising to make it up to her. "How about that weekend trip to the cabin in the Poconos we've been talking about?" Sarah suggested one evening as they sat on opposite ends of the couch, Mike scrolling through his phone while she petted Max. "Yeah, sure," Mike replied distractedly, thumbs typing rapidly. "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." He never did. Spring arrived, and with it, more troubling changes. Mike started going to the gym almost daily, something he'd never shown interest in before. He bought new clothes, fitted shirts, designer jeans that Sarah had never seen him wear. He began using a new cologne that smelled expensive and unfamiliar. "Just trying to take better care of myself," he explained when she commented on it. "Hitting 30 soon, gotta fight the dad bod before it starts." He laughed, but there was something hollow about it. Sarah's best friend, Kayla, voiced her concerns over brunch at their favorite downtown cafe. "Has Mike been acting weird lately? Ryan saw him at Cornerstone Bar last Thursday when you told me you were both staying in." Sarah felt her stomach twist. "He told me he was working late at the office that night. Must have gone out with colleagues after." Kayla gave her a look that said she wasn't convinced, but Sarah changed the subject. She didn't want to acknowledge the doubts creeping into her mind. The password on Mike's phone changed. He used to use their anniversary, 0517, but one day when Sarah picked up his phone to take a picture of Max doing something cute, the familiar pattern no longer worked. "Just being more security conscious," Mike said with a shrug when she mentioned it casually. "You know, with all the client information I have access to now." It made sense, but combined with everything else, Sarah felt a growing unease. Mike started keeping his phone face down on tables. The notifications were perpetually set to silent. Sometimes she'd catch him smiling at the screen, that private, tender smile that used to be reserved for her. One Friday night in July, Mike announced he had to go to Philadelphia for a weekend conference. "Last-minute thing," he said, packing an overnight bag. "The company's sending a few of us to this tech summit. Great opportunity for networking." Sarah offered to drive him to the train station, but he declined. "Company's sending a car. No need to trouble yourself." After he left, the apartment felt emptier than usual. Sarah ordered Thai food and settled in for a movie marathon with Max. Around midnight, her phone buzzed with a text from her colleague, Elena. "OMG, just saw Mike at Timbers with some blonde. Didn't know you guys were in town tonight." Timbers was a popular bar in Allentown, not Philadelphia. Sarah's hands trembled as she replied, "Must be someone who looks like him. Mike's at a conference in Philly." "Weird," Elena texted back. "Could have sworn it was him. Same Eagles tattoo on his forearm." Sarah barely slept that night. When Mike returned Sunday evening, tanned and relaxed, she asked how the conference went. "Exhausting," he said, setting his bag down. "Back-to-back seminars all day Saturday, then dinner with the team. Today was the keynote and closing events." She nodded, watching him carefully. "Learn anything interesting?" "Tons of stuff about emerging tech trends. Nothing you'd find particularly exciting." He kissed her forehead and headed for the shower. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the water run, fighting the urge to go through his bag. This wasn't who she was, suspicious, distrustful. Yet the evidence was mounting that Mike wasn't being honest with her. Over the next few weeks, Sarah began paying closer attention. Mike's late nights at the office never aligned with company events she could verify through social media. His work trips often coincided with his dress shirts returning with a faint floral perfume that wasn't hers. The distance between them grew, with Mike initiating intimacy less frequently and seeming distracted when they did connect. One evening, while Mike was in the shower, his phone buzzed repeatedly on the coffee table. Curiosity got the better of Sarah, and she glanced at the screen. Multiple messages from a contact named Jen popped up, saying things like, "Can't wait to see you again," and "Last night was amazing." Sarah's heart pounded as she unlocked his phone using the familiar pattern she had seen him use countless times, his childhood home address, 2487, which he'd recently changed to. The messages revealed an ongoing affair between Mike and Jen, a colleague from his previous job. They had been meeting secretly for months, sharing intimate moments and making plans for future rendezvous. But what truly devastated Sarah wasn't just the physical betrayal, it was the emotional one. Messages spanning back nearly 7 months showed inside jokes, deep conversations, plans for the future. In one exchange, Jen had asked, "What about Sarah?" to which Mike had replied, "It's complicated, but fading out. Just need more time." Fading out. As if their 4 years together were a dying light bulb. Sarah felt a wave of nausea as the reality of the betrayal sank in. She scrolled further, finding hotel reservations, photos they'd shared, even a discussion about a weekend trip to Cape May, the same weekend Mike had told Sarah he needed to visit his parents in Pittsburgh. When Mike emerged from the bathroom, Sarah confronted him, holding his phone with the incriminating messages displayed. Mike's face went pale, and he stumbled over his words, eventually admitting to the affair. He apologized profusely, claiming he had been feeling disconnected and made a terrible mistake. He begged Sarah for forgiveness, promising to end things with Jen immediately. "It didn't mean anything," he insisted, his voice cracking. "It was just, I don't know, a distraction. Something new and exciting when things between us felt routine." 7 months isn't a mistake, Mike, Sarah said, her voice unnaturally calm despite the storm raging inside her. "It's a choice you made every single day. Please," he begged, reaching for her hands. "We can fix this. I'll do anything, therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I love you, Sarah. Jen was just, she wasn't you." Part of Sarah wanted to believe him. The part that remembered how he'd held her through her father's illness 3 years ago, how they'd built a life together piece by piece. But the trust was shattered, and the thought of trying to rebuild it exhausted her beyond words. "I need some time," she finally said. "I'm going to stay with Kayla for a few days." Mike nodded, relief washing over his face that she wasn't immediately ending things. "Of course, whatever you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk." Sarah packed a small bag and left with Max, unable to bear the thought of leaving her dog with the man who had so thoroughly deceived her. The next week was a blur of tears, anger, and confusion. Sarah confided in Kayla and a few close friends, all of whom were outraged on her behalf. She called in sick to work for 3 days, unable to face patients with her professional mask in place while her personal life was in shambles. Mike texted and called constantly. He sent flowers to Kayla's apartment with notes promising change. He even showed up one evening, but Kayla sent him away, telling him Sarah wasn't ready. On the 8th day, Sarah agreed to meet Mike at a neutral location, the coffee shop where they'd had their second date. The familiarity of the place felt cruel now, tainted by what had happened. "I've ended things with Jen completely," Mike said as soon as they sat down, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "I blocked her number, deleted her contact. I told her I made the biggest mistake of my life and that I'm committed to making things right with you." Sarah nodded slowly. "I appreciate that. But I'm not sure it changes anything. What can I do?" Mike pleaded. "Name it, anything." Sarah considered his question carefully. The anger that had sustained her through the past week had begun to transform into something colder, more calculated. Mike had methodically deceived her for months, living a double life while she remained faithful and trusting. The humiliation stung almost as much as the betrayal. "I need more time," she said finally. "And if we ever have a chance of moving forward, I need complete transparency. Your phone unlocked and available to me anytime. All your passwords. Your location shared with me constantly." Mike nodded eagerly. "Yes, absolutely. Whatever you need. And couples therapy," Sarah added. "Not just a session or two. Committed, ongoing work." "I'll find someone today," Mike promised. Sarah returned to their apartment that evening, but insisted on sleeping in the spare bedroom. Mike accepted this arrangement with visible relief that she had come home at all. Over the next few weeks, he was attentive, transparent, and seemingly committed to rebuilding trust. He attended therapy sessions, both individually and with Sarah. He came home directly after work every day. His phone remained unlocked, and he'd often leave it in plain sight as if to demonstrate his newfound openness. But something had changed in Sarah. As she watched Mike's performance of the perfect repentant boyfriend, she felt a growing sense of detachment. The love she had felt was still there, buried under layers of hurt, but alongside it grew something else, a desire for Mike to truly understand the depth of the pain he had caused. Sarah began her own form of therapy, but also started journaling extensively, documenting her feelings and observations. She noticed patterns in Mike's behavior that suggested his remorse was perhaps more about fear of losing the comfort of their life together than genuine regret for hurting her. 2 months into their reconciliation attempt, Sarah discovered through subtle investigation that while Mike had indeed ended things with Jen, he had maintained contact with her through a work email account he hadn't disclosed. The exchanges weren't romantic, but they were friendly, too friendly for someone who had supposedly cut all ties. Instead of confronting Mike immediately, Sarah made a decision. If Mike could lead a double life, perhaps she needed to be strategic as well. She continued with the couples therapy, continued to show gradual signs of forgiveness, all while formulating a plan. First, she consulted with a lawyer friend about her options regarding their shared lease and finances. Then, she began quietly preparing for independence, opening a new bank account, researching apartments, and reconnecting with nursing contacts about potential job opportunities in other hospitals, preferably with better pay and advancement potential. Sarah also reached out to Jen directly, suggesting they meet for coffee. The woman was initially hesitant, clearly afraid of a scene, but Sarah assured her this was about closure, not confrontation. They met at a cafe across town. Jen was pretty in a conventional way, blonde, petite, with an anxious smile that revealed perfect teeth. "I just want to understand," Sarah said calmly after they'd gotten their drinks. "Not the affair itself, I understand how attraction works. But the deception. Did you know about me from the beginning?" Jen looked down at her latte. "Not right away. He said he was in a relationship that was essentially over, just living together while transitioning apart." She looked up, guilt in her eyes. "By the time I found out that wasn't true, I was already involved." "And did he make promises to you? About a future together?" Jen nodded slowly. "He said once things were settled with you, we'd have a fresh start. Even talked about moving to Seattle together for a job opportunity." Seattle. Mike had never mentioned any interest in Seattle to Sarah. The revelation stung, but also cemented her resolve. "Thank you for being honest," Sarah said, rising to leave. "I think we both deserved better." As summer turned to fall, Sarah's plan continued to take shape. She excelled at work, earning a promotion to charge nurse and a significant salary increase. She reconnected with old friends Mike had never warmed to, rebuilding her social circle. She even took a photography class she'd always been interested in but had put off due to Mike's dismissive attitude toward her artistic phase. At home, she maintained the appearance of a healing relationship. They resumed date nights, physical intimacy, and discussions about the future. Mike, relieved by her apparent forgiveness, let down his guard. The phone remained unlocked, but he checked it less anxiously in her presence. The location sharing was still active, but he seemed to forget it was there. In October, an opportunity presented itself. Stellar Tech announced they were considering Mike for a major promotion, development team leader for their most important client, Nexacorp. It would mean a substantial salary increase and significant professional advancement. "This could be huge for us," Mike said excitedly over dinner. "We could finally think about buying that house we've been talking about." Sarah smiled warmly. "I'm so proud of you. You've worked hard for this." What Mike didn't know was that Sarah had been cultivating a friendship with Elaine from HR at Stellar Tech, who she'd met at a company picnic months earlier. Through casual conversations, Sarah had learned that the promotion decision would be heavily influenced by a comprehensive background check and character assessment, given the sensitive nature of Nexacorp's government contracts. The next day, Sarah took a calculated risk. Using Mike's unlocked phone while he was in the shower, she sent a text to Jen, "I miss you. Can we talk? Just once. For closure if nothing else." When Jen replied cautiously, Sarah, still posing as Mike, suggested meeting at a coffee shop near Stellar Tech's offices the following afternoon, timing it perfectly with Mike's final interview for the promotion. That evening, Sarah mentioned to Mike that she'd be working a double shift the next day due to a colleague's family emergency. In reality, she had taken the day off. The following afternoon, Sarah watched from her car across the street as Mike entered the coffee shop where Jen was waiting. She gave them 10 minutes together before making an anonymous call to Elaine from HR. "I'm sorry to do this anonymously," Sarah said, disguising her voice slightly, "but I thought you should know that Mike Taylor is currently at Cornerstone Coffee with a woman he had an affair with while in a committed relationship. Given Nexacorp's emphasis on character and trustworthiness, this seemed relevant to your evaluation process." She hung up before Elaine could ask questions. 20 minutes later, she watched as Elaine herself entered the coffee shop, clearly visible through the large windows. The look of shock on Mike's face was visible even from a distance. 3 days later, Mike came home devastated. "They gave the promotion to Derek," he said, collapsing onto the couch. "Said they went in a different direction at the last minute. I don't understand, the interviews were going perfectly." Sarah expressed appropriate sympathy while feeling a cold satisfaction. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about consequences. For months, Mike had risked their relationship for momentary excitement with Jen. Now, his career had suffered a setback because of the same poor judgment. But Sarah wasn't finished. Over the next few weeks, she methodically executed the remaining parts of her plan. She secured a nursing position at Memorial Hospital in Harrisburg, 40 minutes away but offering significantly better pay and advancement opportunities. She signed a lease on a pet-friendly apartment near a park perfect for Max. She withdrew her portion of their joint savings and closed the account. Finally, she reached out to Jen one last time, woman to woman, and shared her discoveries about Mike's pattern of deception, not just with her, but with others before her. A bit of social media investigation had revealed at least one other relationship that had overlapped with the beginning of Mike and Sarah's time together. On a crisp November morning, while Mike was at work, Sarah packed her belongings, loaded Max into her car, and left a letter on the kitchen counter. In it, she detailed exactly what she knew, how she knew it, and the steps she had taken in response. She explained that by the time he read this, she would be settled in her new apartment, with a new job starting the following week. She had arranged for her name to be removed from the lease, and her portion of the rent was paid through the end of the year, her final gift to him. "I could have caused you so much more damage," she wrote in closing. "I could have exposed everything to everyone we know. But that kind of revenge would have kept me tethered to this pain, to you. Instead, I'm choosing to build something new, something you can't touch. Maybe someday you'll understand what you threw away. Maybe you never will. Either way, I hope you learn that actions have consequences, and trust, once broken, reveals the true character of the person who shattered it." When Mike arrived home to find the apartment half empty, Sarah's letter, and Max gone, the reality of what he had lost hit him with full force. He called and texted frantically, but Sarah's number had changed. He drove to Kayla's apartment, but no one answered. He even went to Riverside Clinic, only to learn that Sarah no longer worked there. Sarah, meanwhile, spent her first evening in her new apartment setting up Max's bed, arranging her favorite books on freshly installed shelves, and breathing in the potential of her uncompromised space. Her phone buzzed with texts from Kayla and other friends checking in, making plans to visit once she was settled. As she stood by the window, watching the sunset over her new neighborhood, Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. There was lingering sadness for what had been lost, satisfaction at having taken back control, and uncertainty about the path ahead. The revenge she had orchestrated had brought a measure of justice, but she recognized it couldn't heal all wounds. Perhaps the greatest revenge was this: while Mike's life had contracted, lost promotion, lost relationship, lost trust of colleagues, hers had expanded into new possibilities. She had discovered a strength in herself she hadn't known existed, a capacity to rebuild from betrayal without letting it define her. As darkness fell, Sarah turned away from the window and toward her new life. The future stretched before her, unmarked by Mike's deception, unlimited by his expectations. Whether happiness would find her there remained to be seen, but for the first time in many months, she felt truly free to discover who she might become on her own terms. She thought briefly of Mike, alone in the apartment they had shared, finally understanding the magnitude of what his choices had cost him. Was it enough? Would he change? These questions no longer consumed her the way they once had. His journey from here was his own to navigate, just as hers was now gloriously, terrifyingly her own.